My second case study is the idea of a dam break. And dam break is important, and we already see this around the world, but it can happen here in this one case in Nevada, 2017. It's not that long ago. Some tailings dam that got breached through. The question is, how does the flood wave propagate downstream? We design dams, and we want to see what's going to happen if that thing breaks down. What is going to be the flood discharge 100 kilometers downstream of here, what will be sediment concentration, or how much damage, and so forth. So I was fortunate enough to work on a project, and this is different than this dam here. You may have seen this video, and if not, then it's worth seeing a second for sure. I want to talk about the Das Brumadinho in Brazil, and this is a dam that's going to fail. Yesterday, I talk about those shear stresses. So I talk about the yield strength and the viscous strength, and then I talk about the turbulent and dispersive. So mine tailings will have fine material. They try to separate them and to have the sand in some areas closer to the dam. And behind that, they'll put the fines, the silts farther behind. You will see this dam fail, and you will see the stress. So at the beginning, when that thing fails, it gets saturated, static liquefaction. The soil gets weaker. We talked about this yesterday. And eventually you get tremendous pressure. If this is saturated behind it and you build tremendous pressure, hydrostatic pressure behind this thing, that's going to push all the material at the base of the dam out of the system. So the yield strength is really what is critical. You want the yield strength to be greater than the applied force to keep this in place. And if it's the opposite, that thing is going to go first. And it starts moving, you start getting viscous effects into this thing, but very rapidly, you're going to see turbulence coming and taking all over the place because you get fine grain and you're going to see turbulence taking over. You'll see the base, will get the highest pressure. You see the yield, but that thing comes out, flashes out. Turbulent shear develop very, 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 very quickly. Yesterday. You see this coming down. So the front wave, the front wave is, turbulent, right? So inertial, but there's no big class, so it cannot be a debris flow. It's a mud flood. So the front part is going to go turbulent flow, race out of the system. Yeah, that's what you saw in the background at the beginning. Behind this, now you start seeing this, the tailings, the mud tailings in the back there, they are more viscous. They have a lot more silts and clays, and they will come down slowly and gradually. And that's what caused the mud flow that you saw yesterday, where the yield strength and the viscosity are the two dominant stresses. So one dam failure can cause, in a way, two types of flows. I will not talk about the people who were walking on the dam the day that this happened, because if you watch the video very carefully, you will see those people there. And it's a disaster. It's serious stuff, right? So we design things, we want to make sure our design is going to be safe and things will be monitored properly and they'll be inspected and so forth. So here, that's a different site in the same country called Fundão Dam. That's the one on which we work. I had Marcos Palu from Brazil working with me on a PhD 5 to 8 years ago and did his PhD with us. And he could speak Portuguese. He could read all those reports in Brazil, so he could collect a lot of data. And the Fundão Dam was located here. We had data over 500 kilometers of this river. You can see it's just a snapshot of the disaster happening there at different locations. So very close to the dam, you can see the village got wiped out completely. And if you pay attention closely, you will find cars like here, cars that have been uplifted, like I said, with mud flows yesterday, right? The mud coming underneath, lifting the car, putting this on a fence, and the car is standing on a kind of adobe wall that you see in all those countries. Many people died. Second, you can see here, this area, this area of town, this is a church. The church goes all the way to the floor here. The building next door got totally covered with mud. I mean, that's a mud flood here at this point. It's not really something like what we saw yesterday. And all the porch, all covered in mud. You can see this with the color. Candonga Dam is, I forgot, 100 some kilometers. This whole thing is 500 kilometers. And the flood, if I remember, was the 5th. So about a day later, the Candonga Dam there, they had to sluice all the sediment out as quickly as possible. They measured concentration up to 700,000 milligram per liter, which is far from negligible. Now we're looking at 5 days later, then the flood got to the Doce River all the way to Governor Valladares city here. And you can see all the metal oxides there in the tailings that are passing by, concentration a lot less, 30,000 milligram per liter. And then 10 days later, then it reached the outlet at sea, right? The Atlantic Ocean right there. So on the 21st November, concentration about 1,500 milligram per liter. But as engineers, we want to know how can we model this kind of thing and to prevent this from happening elsewhere. They had the data. I mean, my student pulled this all out. Marcus, I give him all the credit. So you have a discharge here, 1,800 cubic meters per second. That's estimated here. But the other ones were measured at different locations along the river. There's different G6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As you get closer to the ocean, the number of the station goes down. So that was great. We could calculate things from that. Could do flood wave propagation. We get diffusive wave model to calculate the diffusion and propagation of this wave there. I will not get into those details here as much as I want to show sediment concentration measurements in comparison with the water. So what you see here is the water in blue and the sediment in red. So if you get closer to the event, you can see the flood in blue here and the red dots. They are all pretty much in sync, right? And as you go farther downstream, you get the flood a bit lower, and then you get concentration, about in sync. But if you go farther downstream, you get the flood coming here. Yeah, the flood comes today, and the sediment comes a day later, 2 days later. So that's 1 day here. So 1 day, 2 days later, you get the peak of sediment. Why is that? It's because of the Clyde-Seddon law, right? The flood wave propagation is beta times v, the velocity. So beta is 1.5 or something like that. So the flood waves moves faster than the fluid. So we assume by advection, the sediment is carried by the fluid, same velocity. But the flood wave is propagating faster than the fluid. And now it's the first time in my life that I see data to prove this, because we talk about this, we lecture about this, the theory and all that stuff in textbooks, but here we can see it, and it's kind of amazing. In terms of modeling, then here, of course, I have to snow you guys under and whatnot. And we use fancy model. And at first, I said, wow, we need a 3D model. Oh, no, I think I'll get away with 2D model. And after that, my approach always simplify as much as possible. I get a benchmark, get a number, estimate something, and then let's try 1D. I mean, it's 500 kilometers long. Even if this thing is 1 kilometer wide, then it's 1 in 500. So a 1D model should do well. Finally, then you look at this, it's a diffusive wave. So you have advection, right? Advection, dCdt concentration is function of time. So U is the carrier, the velocity, right? dCdx is the change in concentration with x. So this is advection. I call this a truck, and you put a load on the truck, and the truck moves the velocity U. So does the sediment with it, right? So advection. The second term, the KD, is the dispersion. You get diffusion left and right of that truck there. You can imagine that you run your truck you put dust in the back of your truck, and you run this 50 miles an hour. All the dust is coming out of the truck, and then the dust is just going all over the place. The diffusion, dispersion, right? KD, d second CDX squared, and minus KC, that dust is going to settle down, okay? So it's all a linear, mathematical terms. That's why mathematics is so important. It's all a linear. You get C, 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 and C. You don't have C squared, so it's not a quadratic equation. So like fluid mechanics is a big problem, but for diffusion, advection, dispersion, you can find analytical solutions to this thing. So if you get a pulse from this, and of course that looks ugly because it's error functions here, complementary error functions. But when I was a student, we had to learn this thing. I said, I'll never use this in my life, okay? Because you had to look in the table and all that stuff. Well, wait a minute. This function, ERFC.precise, it is an Excel spreadsheet. Nowadays, times have changed. Your generation, not mine, can use this thing and take it from there. And you find a very nice and simple analytical function here. So you get a pulse of contaminant or sediment or water or whatever, and you can calculate at any space and time what the concentration is going to be with this thing here. Well, you need x, the position, time t, the velocity at which it's propagating. The gamma is the settling parameter coming here. So you have dispersion, K is the settling parameter, and then velocity, you get that gamma in there. KD is dispersion, and tau is the length, the duration of your pulse, and T is at any time. So it looks complicated, but I give this homework to students, and it turns out to be their easiest homework they do the whole semester, and they figure out, wow, I did something. So you can have contaminants in any river. Let's say you dump an oil spill in a river and whatnot, and you want to calculate that thing lasts 2 hours or 3 hours, and you get a concentration of X, can be arsenic or whatever, and dump this in this river. You get a velocity, estimate KD. You get settling of this thing. Maybe it doesn't settle. Maybe it's a conservative substance or so, or it evaporates. I don't know what. And then you can calculate this analytically. I find this very, very simple, and that's where mathematics can help us as engineers solve this thing. So I had the student play with this thing, and we tried different methods. And if you apply this simple method, you find that without calibration, you just need velocity, diffusion, and settling parameter. That's all. And then you can calculate all of those different locations, what the concentration is going to be. And you can see like green and green, we try to tie the measurements with the diamonds, and the calculation from the model with the curves right there. And you can see concentration all the way up to 700,000 milligram per liter, which is really our input. And then you can see we have measured values of 400,000 milligram per liter at some different locations and whatnot. And this works beautifully well. Marcus preferred a numerical scheme to solve this thing. And you have a tri-banded matrix right there that's very big. And you just invert the matrix. And, nowadays with computers, there are many ways to skin the fish and get this done. He prefers this method. I prefer the analytical. And there's another method that's simple, which is diffusion, and that you can use. So those things I talk about in my books and whatnot, and I find this extremely efficient. So to summarize,